red blood cells right inside their little veins right there. All right. These are but a few examples of to indicate unambiguously that the embryo fetus, extraembryonic fetal tissues, or both, direct the orchestration of the physiological adaptations of pregnancy. It's controlling the whole thing. The maternal organism passively responds, even at times to their own detriment. Now, isn't that amazing? What's interesting here, and this is not in the text, it's like this maternal love for the baby built in by a great designer that's going to be there after baby's born, is going to protect that baby after baby's born, is going to love that baby even at the cost of her own life after baby's born, is actually developing and happening before baby's born. Before baby's born. And the placenta regulates both the fetal and maternal hormones. Now, this is kind of fun because we're going to talk about these hormones that are circulating around in the women. And we all love the effects. So, it gives a little spice to life. All right, the fetus is also the prime contributor to the endocrine. Endocrine is the hormone system. Alteration in pregnancy. Now, this is cool. The formation of estrogens during pregnancy occurs by way of placental aromatization of C19 steroids, which in turn are produced by the fetal adrenal glands. Wow. What is this talking about here? This is saying that the estrogen that is being made in mom's body, she needs high levels of this estrogen, and we'll talk about those in a second, what she needs. She's not making that estrogen. Baby's body is making the estrogen. And C19 steroids, that's just a carbon-19 type of, it's a type of steroid which we get from eating cholesterol. You need that cholesterol, which is going to contribute the steroid hormones to make estrogen and testosterone. They're both C19 steroids there. But in this particular case, mom's not making them. The high concentrations of estrogen are being made inside baby's body, and they're being kicked out through the placenta into mom's body. Ooh, this is a great graph, but we don't talk about it. But what this is talking about is here, is this is just for the non-believers in the audience. It goes through the entire process of how baby goes and it contributes and it makes all of these different hormones. The progesterone, it even makes a little bit of testosterone, the estradiol, estrone, those are both just names for estrogen. All of these are going to be made, and this biochemical process is taking place both in the baby's adrenal glands, which is a little gland sitting on the top of its kidneys, and inside the placenta, and it's shifting them back and forth between the baby and the mother. And where does it get the building blocks to make these things? It gets them from mother. Takes the building blocks from mom, brings it into its own body, makes these compounds, kicks out the effects into mom's body, and is controlling the whole process by doing it. Placenta hormones in maternal circulation prime mom's uterus, getting it ready to deliver the baby. Now, this is kind of interesting. During the last few weeks of pregnancy, estrogen in mom's body, the concentration, reaches its highest levels in the mother's blood. Where's that estrogen coming from? Baby. This has two important consequences. First, the estrogen causes an abundance of oxytocin receptors on the outside of the uterus. The myometrial cells, that's the muscle cells of mom's uterus. And it antagonizes progesterone's quieting influence on the uterine muscles. As a result, the myometrium becomes increasingly irritable and weak, irregular uterine contractions begin to occur. Now let me explain what's happening. This is getting kind of complex. Mom's uterus, it's got the inner layer, the endometrium, where the baby is forming. It's got the outer layer, which is the muscle. It's going to squeeze the baby out. It's going to start to squeeze. But it's being held in a state of quietness for 9 months because you don't want it to what? Squeeze early. So you want that to be quiet. What's quieting it? Progesterone, which is being made by the placenta, is quieting the uterus down. But in the final weeks before pregnancy, the baby's adrenal glands kick out tons and tons of this estrogen. I shouldn't say tons, lots of it. And it begins to circulate through mom's body. And it begins to cause other receptors to a completely different compound called oxytocin. Oxytocin, and these receptors are forming all over the uterus. Now we know oxytocin, the man-made version is called Pitocin. Pitocin. So women who are going into pregnancy and they want to induce the pregnancy, they squirt a bunch of Pitocin into the bag of IV fluid. That flows into her body, and that starts the uterus to start contracting. Well, her body is also going to make oxytocin, or Pitocin. It's the same thing, just two different names. And right before, the few weeks before pregnancy, her body's making a little oxytocin. The concentration of oxytocin receptors on the uterus is going up. And so the uterus becomes a little disquieted. And it starts to contract. And that's why women, a few weeks before pregnant, get what? Braxton Hicks contractions. And they start to feel the contractions coming on weeks before it. That's because these receptors are getting up there. It's turning them out. And it's getting the uterus primed to deliver that baby. The placenta and fetal hormones initiate a cycle in the mother to begin this parturition. All right. Certain cells of the fetus begin to produce oxytocin. Wow. It's going to make this substance which is going to kick off the contractions, which in turn acts on the placenta, stimulating production and release of prostaglandins. Both hormones are powerful uterine muscle stimulants. And since the myometrium is now highly sensitive to oxytocin, why is it sensitive to oxytocin? Because baby's adrenal glands have dumped out all the estrogen, which caused the receptors to grow out on the outside of the myometrium. So now it's primed. And then baby says, I guess we need a little oxytocin out there. So it starts to make the oxytocin. And the uterus has been primed. And it starts then to cause a contraction on the uterus. On the uterus. And it starts to push the baby out. It says there, now the myometrium is highly sensitive to oxytocin. Contractions become more frequent and more vigorous. At this point, the increasing